Okay, so let's start off by just talking about the fundamental philosophical differences between Thesis and Genesis. And in fact, I identify two that I think have a way of influencing a small business person's decision about which to use. Now, the first fundamental difference is how they're designed. One is designed to be used as it is, and the other is designed to be customized. So Genesis is designed to be used with child themes, right? Most people don't use Genesis all by itself. Most people install Genesis and then choose a child theme that looks the way they want their site to look, and it's intended to be used just like that, or mostly like that. There's a limited opportunity to make changes to functionality or appearance, at least without resorting to making changes to the underlying code. And the upside to that is the upside to having a system that's designed to be used as is or used out of the box, is that you can have a very polished looking website in a relatively short period of time. And that is one of the compelling reasons for a beginner to choose Genesis, is because you can so quickly and easily have a very polished looking website. Now, Thesis is designed to be customized. Similarly to Genesis, you have to use a skin with it. Skins are very similar to child themes, slightly different in functionality, slightly different in terminology, but nevertheless, sort of conceptually, they're very much the same. But most of the Thesis functionality is built around the assumption that you are going to customize the skin that you're using. And so it has the big built-in drag and drop template editor, it has the built-in custom CSS editor, and then depending upon what kind of a skin you're using, it has extensive design, display, and content options. And the upside to that is that you have very fine granular control in many cases over how your site works and what it looks like. The downside to that is that it doesn't necessarily end up with a very polished looking site very quickly, because since you have more things to choose to change, more opportunities to change, you have more of an impetus to change, and therefore more stuff to learn and a longer time between when you install it and when it's ready to go. So you're going to start off with that as that fundamental difference, whether you're going to use something very substantially as it is, or whether you are going to pick something that you intend to customize substantially. The second philosophical difference is in how they're used. Really, there is the WordPress way of using WordPress, and there is the Thesis way, or this new way of using WordPress. You know, the fundamentals of creating a menu and creating a post or a page and adding images and that kind of stuff, those aren't any different regardless of which theme you choose. But there is a WordPress way and a Thesis way. The WordPress way for themes is to physically make changes to files. So if you're going to change something on a typical WordPress site, if you're going to change something in Genesis, you're going to download one of the files that needs to be changed, and you're going to type changes into that file, save that file. You will have physically changed the file. Web pages are divided up into templates, and templates are chopped up into template parts, and when you are making a change to any of those things, you're actually changing the theme or the child theme. Now, the Thesis way has virtually no files to change. Now, it does provide you with the ability to change files so that you can make changes in a way that is similar to WordPress if you see fit, but it's really intended that you not actually physically change any files, that all of your customization is done inside of the interface of Thesis, and that never results in a file change. That just results in changes in the database. In the Thesis way, the template editor displays the entire template, and there's never or almost never any coding involved. And changes to your skin, changes that you make in the skin, actually never fundamentally change the underlying code base. You're never really changing the skin. What you're doing is changing settings in the skin or overlaying settings on the skin, but you're never actually making a fundamental change to the underlying code base of the skin. So that's the WordPress way of programming. That's one aspect of the WordPress way. That is, whether you're making physical changes to something that already exists, or you are making options and setting changes and overlaying those things on top of something that exists. The second WordPress way that has a way of influencing this thing is the WordPress way of licensing. Now, the WordPress way of licensing is GPL, V2, or V3, which means that there are no restrictions on the use or redistribution of anything that has a GPL, V2, or V3. So, you could buy Genesis and then give it to your buddy and give it to your clients, and you could decide to set up an alternative Genesis site and sell Genesis. All of those things are actually allowed by the licensing of WordPress. And what you're generally doing in WordPress, if you're paying for anything, you are paying for support and for updates. So when you buy Genesis, you're not really buying the themes you're not really buying the theme so much as you're buying initial access to the theme and then support. Whereas, and the consequence of that is that Genesis can be cheaper. For example, you can legitimately have a free copy of Genesis and use it as much as you want, and it didn't cost you anything. The Thesis way is not like that. Thesis is deliberately not GPL, which means it does contain restrictions on the number of sites that you can use it on and has prohibitions against redistributing it. When you buy Thesis, you are buying a license for you to use on your own sites. Even if you bought a developer's license, which has unlimited number of sites, it nevertheless means that you can only use them on your own sites, and you can't give Thesis to somebody else or reuse Thesis on a client site. If you're going to use Thesis on a client site, then you have to buy a client license for that site, which is much less expensive than the standard license, but nevertheless. Thesis has this licensing formula that does not comply with WordPress's GPL. So in one way, you can think of Thesis as being more expensive then. And Thesis can be more expensive, but typically the expense is not really going to be a governing factor for, a serious small business person, whether you spend $150 or $200. If you're actually considering using a premium theme, then the chances are you probably shouldn't be thinking about the expense as a controlling decision-making factor. However, if you are fundamentally opposed to anything that's not GPL, then Thesis 2.1 is not GPL, and that can be a factor in your decision-making.